Before the thunder of hooves, there was always silence, smoke, and a blade drawn for a goat. Alexander did not charge until the gods had spoken. In this quiet hour together, we're going to step into the half-light before battle. The moments Alexander the Great guarded like a secret. We'll travel with him from the shoreline of the Hellespont to the deserts of Egypt, from star-haunted nights before Gaugamela to monsoon-slick riverbanks in India. And we'll ask a simple question with complicated answers. How did Alexander use religious ceremonies before war? You will hear about sacrifices and seers, hymns and omens, eclipses and oracles. You'll meet Aristander, the prophet who stood so near the king he could smell the resin on Alexander's hair. And you'll watch as rituals do work, soothing fear, welding an army into one body, bending local gods into the Macedonian story. Not everything we'll touch is certain. Ancient authors wrote with agendas. They embroidered, they argued. When the ground shakes, I'll tell you. But the shape is clear. For Alexander, war was not just bronze and muscle. It was smoke and song and a listening for signs. Settle in. Slow your breathing. The first altar is being built. Picture a low stone altar hastily raised from local rock, chalky dust whitening the hands of the men who stack it. The air is cool, and the army is not yet broken into its clamor. In front of the king, a seer, Mantis, lifts knife and bowl. The victim's hair is sprinkled with barley. A prayer flows like a river, to Zeus, to Athena, to whichever god of the place is listening. The blade flashes. Blood runs. The liver is lifted in two hands, still warm, glistening violet brown. Eyes trace the lobes for cracks and color. Favorable? Unfavorable? Attack or wait. This was not an exotic flourish. In the Greek world, sacrifice before danger. The sphagia was custom. Xenophon writes about it as calmly as one writes a shopping list. A hoplite phalanx did not move without it. The paean, a hymn to Apollo, was sung with shields on arms and spear points bright at noon. Then came the allelagmos, the raw battle cry that broke the stillness. Homer's heroes did it. So did the boys from village farms in the Macedonian hills. Philip II, Alexander's father, hammered ritual into the rhythm of his army. The Macedonian court had always been close to its gods. Zeus of Dodona's whispering oaks, Dionysus with his ecstatic rites, Heracles, the club-bearer, ancestor claimed by Macedonian kings. And behind the altar stood someone like Aristander of Telmessus, the professional reader of signs. He would interpret not only livers and lung patterns, but also meteors, dreams, the erratic flight of a bird, or the shiver of a standard in a windless night. Ritual was practical. It enforced timing in a world without clocks. It kept men steady. It picked a day, a moment, when the king could say with a straight face and a clear heart, now. For Alexander, this grammar of sacrifice and song would become something more, a toolkit for empire. Not just prayer, but policy. Not just omen, but morale. He would use it to step across boundaries of culture and faith, fold new peoples into his story, and as he did, turn hundreds of miles of hostile ground into a road. From the altar's smoke to the spear's gleam, the line is thinner than it looks, and it leads first to the sea. The altar is doused, the blade wiped clean. Turn your face east to the Hellespont, where a young king reaches for Asia. Hellespont, Troy, and the first test at the Granicus. The water lies flat as hammered silver. On the European shore, horses stamp and snort, muzzles steaming in the dawn. Alexander is 22. A crown has barely settled on his head. He will not step onto Asia as a thief in the night. He will do it the old way, with symbols and smoke. Some sources say that, standing on the prow, Alexander hurled a spear toward the Asian shore and cried out that he claimed the land as Spear One. Others say he sprang ashore in full armor and marked the moment as if it were a personal duel, man against continent. Whether that spear flew or not, we know this. He made offerings. He sacrificed at the Hellespont and then rode inland to the ruins of Troy, to Ilium, to the wind that still whispers about Achilles. At the shrine of Athena, he left gifts and took a shield, some sources say, and then, with Hephaestion, placed wreaths on the tombs of Achilles and Patroclus. Plutarch tells us that Alexander spoke to Achilles as if to a friend from childhood. How lucky to have had Homer sing your deeds. The ritual is thick with meaning. He isn't just honoring a dead warrior. He's weaving himself into a narrative older than memory. For the men who follow him, many of whom grew up on Homer's verses, the message is simple. Nothing that happens out there is new. The gods have seen it all. We step into a story already blessed, and with Troy's dust still on their sandals. The Macedonians turn north and east toward the Persian satrapies of Asia Minor. The first battle is waiting at the Granicus, a river with banks too steep for comfort. The Persian cavalry lines glitter across the water, bronze scales bright with dye and fear. Before the noise, Alexander sacrifices. He prays to Zeus, to Athena, to the gods of the river, and to his ancestor Heracles. Arrian tells us he made the customary offerings and waited for favorable signs. This is not superstition in the cartoonish sense. It is theater, yes, and reassurance, and also a way to choose a moment when firm feet can stand on slick river stones. Parmenion, the veteran general, advises waiting until morning when the current will be lower and the slope less treacherous. Alexander refuses. The omens, he says, are good. He rides down into the water with the companion cavalry, his white plume flashing, the hoofbeats thudding in the ribcage. The duel on the riverbank is confusion. Fighting as slippery as eels, horses screaming, men dragged into the water by the weight of their own armor. Twice Alexander nearly dies. A Persian noble's axe glances off his helmet. Blood runs. Aristander might have been watching it all from the ridge, clutching his staff, thinking of livers and prophetic phrases. When the Persians break and scatter, the Macedonians find their dead on both banks. Alexander raises a trophy. He sacrifices again, this time in thanks, thank offering to Athena, to Zeus Soter, Zeus the Savior. The army eats roasted meat that night, a practical blessing. The bones of the animal crack softly in the cook fires as the stars come on. A rhythm is set. Approach, sacrifice, sign, attack, think. That cadence will carry them deeper, toward a city in the sea that wears the face of a god. The first bridge of blood is crossed. The gods are listening. The sea glitters ahead, and on it, a stubborn island. Tyre, Heracles, and the knot that would not be tied. Tyre sits like a cat on a cushion of rock, an island, proud and untouchable. The Persians trust it. Alexander cannot pass it by. The city has a god with a Greek face, Melkart to the Phoenicians, Heracles to the Greeks. This will matter. He writes to the Tyrians and asks to enter the city to sacrifice to Heracles. It is a calculated move. He offers the ritual of common devotion as a key to the gate. They refuse, so Alexander lays siege. He piles a causeway out into the sea. Tyre laughs and sends fire ships. The sea eats the first attempt. Aristander, the seer, reads omens. Some sources say that a dream came. He saw a satyr, Satyros, dancing and playing, and, punning on the word, told Alexander that he would get Tyre, Satyros. It sounds quaint, but in a world where words themselves can be signs, it hardens men. He also tells the king that he will take the city, but with effort. That effort will stretch months. Alexander sacrifices to Heracles, claiming kinship across cultures. When Tyre finally falls, after storming walls under a rain of stones and arrows, the violence is ugly. But look for the ritual immediately afterwards. Alexander offers a formal sacrifice to Heracles/Melkart and holds a procession. Greek ritual in a Phoenician city. The altar is a hinge. The empire swings on it. Between sieges, between decisions, there are signs to be read. We come to Gordium with its wagon and the knot that binds it. Legend says that whoever undoes the Gordian knot will rule Asia. The rope is twisted so thickly no one can be found. Alexander steps up, knife or fingers. In one version, he unpicks it patiently. In another, he slices it with his sword. Arian prefers an untying, others relish the cut. But what matters happens in the night. Lightning and thunder. Aristander interprets the storm as Zeus's nod. The king has the god's approval. The sky itself answers a puzzle with fire. Gordium shows us the flexibility in Alexander's ritual mind. When a story can be used, he uses it. When a god can be made to smile, he asks for the smile and then tells his men that he saw it. Ritual here is not passive. It strikes first. From Tyre's smoking altars and Gordium's storm-lit courtyard, the path bends toward a different desert and a different god, whose temple whispers, "Son." The sea wind still tugs at the cloak. Now it fills with sand. South to Egypt, where oracles speak in the language of kings. Egypt, Siwa, and the fabric of divinity. Egypt receives Alexander like an heir. The Persians were never loved here. The temples have waited. In Memphis and along the Nile, he sacrifices to Apis, the living bull, and to local gods whose statues have watched pharaohs come and go. But the heart of the episode is a journey across the desert to an oracle in an oasis. Siwa, Ammon's temple wrapped in palms and dunes, is a place of shimmering heat. Sand hisses underfoot. The priests wear white. Their eyes are the color of old wood. Alexander enters with offerings. We don't know the exact words. Ancient authors do not agree. Some sources say he asked whether any of his father Philip's killers still lived, and whether he was the son of Zeus Ammon. Others suggest the oracle greeted him with a slip, "O Paidion, my child," as "O Paidios, O son of Zeus," and that this became a story too tidy to resist. What is clear is that he left with the aura of divine approval. Pharaohs are gods in Egypt. A Greek king claiming Heracles as an ancestor could slide into that shape. Why does this matter before war? Because Alexander's battles are not just fights against armies. They are arguments addressed to cities, to officials, to satraps wondering whether to open their gates. If a king has the stamp of heaven on his brow, if he sacrifices like you sacrifice and honors your gods as his own, it becomes easier to submit. A siege avoided is a battle won. A procession crowned by local priests is a weapon turned sideways. He doesn't abandon his own pantheon. He layers it. He sacrifices to Zeus and to Ammon, to Athena Polias, and to Egyptian deities, folding one ritual onto another like careful fabric. The offering smoke looks the same. When he leaves Egypt, the title follows him, son of Ammon. He will write to Greek cities like a monarch of two languages. Back east, his sternest test waits in a wide plain under a blackened moon. The desert sighs behind them. The army turns inland with a new shine on its banners. Ahead lies a king, Darius, and a night that stares back. Skies, seers, and a management of fear. Gaugamela is not just a battle. It is a stage. The Persian court performs power. Chariots scythed with blades, horses with proud collars. The king of kings under a canopy ringed by magi. The Macedonian army arrives leaner, hungrier. The king walking the lines in a helm polished like a moon. The night before the battle, the sky changes. There is a lunar eclipse, a silver coin bitten black. Ancient minds did not see celestial mechanics. They saw messages. Darius's magi read the dark. They say that the eclipse foretells the fall, not of Darius, but of Alexander. Maybe. Sources disagree. Arian tells us that Alexander, too, sought the meaning. He performed sacrifices. Some say to Selene, the moon. Others say to the usual gods, and asked Aristander to read the signs. Aristander's reply is a masterclass in morale. The eclipse, he says, is bad for the Persians. The moon is Persia. The sun is Macedonia. The moon is dark. The sun is bright. Men nod. Fear pulls back a step. Some sources say Alexander sacrificed to Phobos, fear, before Gaugamela. Sacrificing to fear is an audacity and a joke. You name the thing you dread, you put on the altar, and you kill it. Whether or not the ritual happened as described, the idea tells us what was at stake. Control of the army's pulse rate. Control of the hands that would lift sarissas in a dawn dust storm. Morning comes with chill air that smells faintly of crushed grass. Alexander lets the men eat. A small act of kindness raised a strategy. He sacrifices again. The seer raises the liver, looks into its moist surfaces, nods. The paean floats over the ranks. The cry rises. Then the king mounts. He does not ride as if heaven guarantees anything. He rides as if the gods have opened a door. The rest is work. The charge of the companion cavalry slices toward Darius's center. Two armies grind against one another, a sound like wood screaming. At one point, the Persian line buckles. Panic moves faster than a horse. Darius turns and flees. The Macedonian pursuit goes wild. The battlefield spreads like spilled ink. Afterwards, the rituals resume their gentle order. Alexander sacrifices in thanks. He visits the Persian dead with a kind of formal courtesy. His enemies had gods, too. He offers respect at the tomb of Cyrus in Pasargadae later, ordering it repaired. He listens to the local priests and magi. A conqueror's generosity is part ritual, part policy, part stagecraft. And remember this, a lunar eclipse cannot be controlled, but its meaning can be told and retold until it settles into the men's bones as inevitability. Ritual here is not superstition. It is narrative made flesh. From the plateau of Gaugamela, from the stuttering torchlight of that strange night, the road runs east, then south, then east again. In Babylon, the old gods wake up and speak in dreams. The moon returns to full, and the city of Babylon lifts its ziggurats like stairways to the sky. Alexander steps inside and asks the oldest priest what the winds are trying to say. Rivers, monsoons, and the last altars. Babylon smells of baked brick and incense. The Chaldeans, its star-reading priests, take Alexander's hand and teach him a different grammar. Not the quick omen of a lark darting over a shield line, but the slow mathematics of skies. He listens. He sacrifices at Marduk's temple. Some sources say, and bows, carefully and with a Macedonian's pride, over rituals older than Homer. The old city answers gently, if you respect our gods, you can rule our streets. East of Susa, the land changes. Mountains give way to a rough map of rivers. The Indus, the Hydaspes, the Hyphasis, names like drumbeats. Before water crossings, the army stops. The sacrificial fire flares in gutters, in damp air. The rains hiss. Lightning claws across close clouds. Alexander prays to the river gods. He pours libations into the current. He may cut the throat of a white bull or a ram, letting the blood fall to a god that is not Greek, but who has watched armies drown for 1,000 years. At the Hydaspes, Porus waits with war elephants, their trunks snaking, their eyes small and patient. The river is swollen and violent, its surface dull with silt. Alexander cannot cross head-on. The current is a shield. He faints and steals upstream in a night of rain. Aristander interprets a tundir klapas favor. The men cross in darkness, sliding on slick stones, holding their breath. The paean whispered, the alalagmos save for the moment their feet bite bank. When dawn lifts, the battle is a grind of muscle and noise. Elephants push into Macedonian ranks like moving hills. Horses rear at smells they were never born to know. Alexander rides, as always, where it is worst. When victory comes, it is not triumphant. It is exhausted. And after, he does what he always does. He offers sacrifices of thanks. He reconciles with Porus, offers gifts, asks him to rule under Macedonian suzerainty. Ritual and politics kiss again. But the gods also speak no. At the Hyphasis, the last river they will not cross, the army refuses to go on. The omens can be bright, the organs pure, the stars favorable. It doesn't matter. Men are tired. The rain does not respect rituals. The jungle's weight sits on them like a hand. Alexander sacrifices, some sources say, to seek permission to continue. The seer signs are not enough to lift human hearts. He yields, not to Persia, but to the weather inside the skull. Before turning back, he builds altars, the famous 12 altars, huge blocks of stone set up to the gods, a mark on the land. Here is as far as we came. The altars are something to talk to when the road west is long. A promise that some stories end with stones and a view, not with blood. Then the Nearchus voyaged down the Indus, the hard march through Gidroja sands, the desert sacrifice of effort itself. In Carmania, a carnival procession that some sources describe as a Dionysian triumph, a ritual made into politics again, a king and army pretending the worst is over. Before Babylon, the signs begin to sour. The Chaldeans warn him, don't enter the city by a certain gate. Don't do certain things. Danger coils inside. He enters anyway, or he detours and enters later. Sources disagree. He performs sacrifices, offers thanks, perhaps hopes to delay an ending he can feel pressing. And in Babylon, the fever finds him. We are not here to dwell in death. But even the last days have ritual heavy as the air. Mute signs because the king's voice is going. Processions past his bed. The sense that a life bound up with the gods must unspool in sight of an altar. What did it all add up to? Before we answer, let's return to the man who stood at his shoulder, the one who made his living on the rim of the sacred and the practical. The rivers have receded from their banks. The fever has not. But in the space between the knife and the prayer, one man kept saying yes and no to kings. His name was Aristander. Aristander in the art of saying now. Aristander of Telmessus does not get a statue in most memory palaces. He should. He is in the background of almost every major decision. When Alexander dreams, Aristander listens. When a bird falls dead at the king's feet, he says what it means. When a liver is marked, he points at the mark and reads out fate in precise syllables. At Tyre, we heard about the punning satyr. At Gordium, the thunder read as an answer. At the siege of Halicarnassus, Aristander is again a steady presence, telling the army that perseverance will pay. At Gaugamela, he looks up at the bitten moon and speaks courage into thousands of throats. He is, in a sense, a technician. He knows the rituals, the proper prayers, the names that go with the smoke. He is also an artist of morale. There's an ethics to seership in this setting, and ancient authors argue about it. Was Aristander opportunistic, saying whatever would hearten the king and keep the army moving? Or did he believe, with a simplicity modern minds find hard to stomach, that livers and birds and lightning are the gramophone needles on which the gods hum messages? Maybe the question misses something. The Greeks did not split the world into mechanical and magical halves the way we do. They saw the sacred laced through causality like veins in marble. You can fight cleverly and still ask Zeus for a nod. You can study terrain and still wait for a favorable liver. Alexander's greatness is that he holds both truths at once. He will kill a knot and call it clever. He will wait a day because smoke blew the wrong direction. Aristander's role is to stabilize that dance. Some sources even tell a story late in the king's life, when Seleucus dreams of a goddess offering him a crown. Aristander interprets it as a grand promise. Whether or not such stories are historical in detail, they were a truth like a borrowed cloak. The men who held the next world together learned, under Alexander, to breathe before the charge in the same rhythm he had set. And the rituals do something else. They universalize a small court, a temple at the Hellespont, a shrine in Egypt, an altar at a river in India. Each is a stage where Alexander stands and says, I belong here too. The goat's blood, the song, the rising smoke, everywhere means the same thing. Together now. We've walked the smoky border between prayer and strategy. Now, let's answer the question we started with. How did these ceremonies work, and why did they matter so much? Ritual as strategy, ritual as glue. It is tempting to treat ritual as colored fringe on a gray garment, the bit that flutters prettily when the real weight is borne by iron and will. But watch closely, and ritual does heavy lifting in at least 4 ways. First, ritual sets the tempo. Armies are vast organisms. They panic easily. They surge and sag. A clear ceremony, a sacrifice, a song, puts a hand on the shoulder of the whole body and says, breathe. You attack not at a moment of random heat, but at a chosen, marked time. The paean makes the breath synchronous across ranks. The knife falling into the throat of a ram draws all eyes to one keen edge. After, the allalagmos lets the tension spill as power. Second, ritual makes meaning portable. You could take an altar anywhere. Alexander crosses into Asia with a spear and a prayer. He goes to Troy and writes himself into a Greek epic. He stands in Egypt and wears someone else's god like a crown, not in mockery, but in inclusion. He pours wine on Persian stone and tells the stones they are his now, because he honors what they honor. This is politics you can taste: sweet wine, char, smoke. Third, ritual tames fear. Some sources say he sacrificed to Phobos before Gaugamela. Whether or not he did, the pattern is clear. By naming fears, by folding them into something as practical as cooking meat, he reduces them. Aristander's interpretations are part of this management. The eclipse could be terror. He makes it promise. Fourth, ritual dramatizes legitimacy. Alexander's kingship is both fragile and immense. He's Bohemian and imperial at once. Macedonian warlord, Greek hegemon, Persian king, Egyptian pharaoh. Those titles do not naturally sit together. Ritual stitches them. The priest of Ammon puts a hand on his head. The Persian magus accepts his offerings. The Greek seer nods. The seams for time hold. There's a fifth, more subtle victory. Ritual, especially when repeated, becomes memory in advance. The men know that before battle there will be a sacrifice, and that if the signs are good, they will attack. They expect the song. They expect Alexander's posture, the lift of his chin, the precise tilt of the blade. Expectation itself is calming. It makes even foreign ground feel like a familiar road. Not everything is smoke and consent. Ritual cannot guarantee weather, cannot make elephants vanish, cannot ease the sweat under a linothorax when the sun is cruel. But it gives humans a handhold. It gives a king a way to say not yet or now. And to make that time, chosen and sacred, feel like destiny. Transitions are short in war. In life, they can be shorter. The last altar is always closer than we think. The smoke thins. The men sheath their knives. We've heard the songs. Now we step back from a line and look at the shape we've drawn. Before the world knew his face, before the horse leaped or the spear lowered, Alexander performed a simple, ancient act. He sacrificed. He poured wine. He sang. He listened for what the gods or the men around him needed to hear. He used ceremony as compass and glue, as theater and therapy, as a tool for building an empire across cultures without losing the army's heart. From the Hellespont's glitter to a desert oracle to a field where the moon turned its face away, the pattern holds. He did not think ritual and reason were enemies. He thought they were levers for the same door. If this opens something for you, if you could feel the heat of the altar and the hush before the first horn, you might like to stay a while. There are more doors to open. Subscribe, leave a thought, and join me next time in the quiet just before history begins to move.